Saludos, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of our Bella interviews. I'm really excited here to have Atalie. Am I saying your name right, by the way?
Yes, Atalie.
It's okay to correct me.
Yeah,
Atalie, who's here, founder of The Bitter Woman. And we're so excited that you're here so we can learn more about you and your journey. And at the end, we'll plug in this really exciting event that she's been planning very diligently and anything else you want to share with folks. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to give you a round of applause. Bravo.
thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on here.
Awesome. Well, okay. So we're just gonna kind of go right into the getting to know you thing. And one of the things I like to ask our guests is always just to kind of tell us a little bit about you. Everybody has a different kind of introduction or what you want folks to know kind of up front. We're gonna get through these questions, obviously, and learn a little bit more about you and unpack the story of Atalie and your business. But what would you like us to know on the front end? Just like tell us a little bit about you.
I always love this question because I feel like it's such a deep question. I'm like, oh my God, what part of my story do I share? And I feel like as human beings, I always like to use the word that we're multifaceted, right? So like there's so many layers to us, but I always like to kind of lead with the fact that I'm first gen, right? I'm Latina. My parents are from El Salvador and Guatemala, and I'm the eldest daughter as well. So all of those things I think really influence like who I am. They're a big part of my story, and they're a huge part of kind of like the story behind the bitter woman as well. But growing up, I would say I can't go to every single place that I've lived in, but I call Southgate home, and that's really important to me. So Southeast LA.
Awesome. Well, okay, we're gonna uncover that a little bit more. But you told us a little bit about who you are and what you want people to know about you, kind of first off. But what about your business? So when I hear the name Bitter Woman, I think, okay, the word bitter normally, right, has a
Hmm.
like a negative connotation to some folks, right? And so they think that and they're like, is this like something that kind of fosters like something negative or, like whatever folks' perception might be. Obviously, I know you and I know your business a lot more through the Emprendedoras program, but what do you want to tell folks about your business? Like, tell us a little bit about what you do or what it's about.
Yeah. So the bitter woman, I get asked a lot, like what is that? What's the origin behind the name? Because you're 100% right. A lot of the times, right, when we think of the word bitter, we think about someone who's either like, angry, frustrated, tiene como está amargada con la vida, it's not always necessarily something positive.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, right, I use the name the bitter woman, and that's the kind of like story behind my business is that I used to consider myself to be a bitter woman. And a lot of that was like rooted in a lot of anger, frustration, pain, that I had really bottled inside of me.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I kind of started to look inward and started to go on this like self-healing journey
Mhm.
that I found the root of all of that quote unquote, right, bitterness and pain. I wanted to transform it, right? I wanted to transform that pain into something more positive, into something I would say just like more of a light. And
Mhm.
so that manifests into me creating the Bitter Woman, which is a community designed for BIPOC women, supporting them on what I call their unapologetic personal growth journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's really kind of like it's we're really here to offer anyone who may be looking for support and community and personal growth. Um, I consider myself to be like a cycle breaker, right? That's one thing that I learned during my journey that there's a lot of beautiful things that our culture gives us.
Mhm.
And then sometimes there's things that we inherit like generational trauma that sometimes we don't need to continue, right? The same patterns, behaviors, and thought processes.
Yeah, I love how you're turning what has a socially constructed negative meaning to like a super strength, right? Or a superpower. Like, how can we flip the narrative that we've been told, that we've grown up to learn is something not good for us or not good for society or however we want to see it, and actually see it as like, this is my drive. This is what motivates me.
Mm-hmm.
This is what builds community, and creating that safe space for women, I think is in and of itself, the name I think is already breaking barriers, right? Because people come to you and your space and your business and your events, and they look at that word and they think about it in a different way. So they might identify as like, I've been kind of bitter, I've been feeling X or I, and it sometimes when we think those thoughts, it like adds to our kind of downfall, right? It adds to our like
Mm-hmm.
sadness or our hurt. But like if you were to flip that and now you're like, no, wait a minute. I've had these experiences. This is what's made me feel this way, but this is actually a strength. This is actually what's made me who I am today. And this is what's going to help me grow and heal, like you said. So I just absolutely love that. Like I said, the name is just healing in and of itself, I feel like.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's like the one thing that is like super important too, is that we can use sometimes our pain and use the that narrative, and we can use that as like the catalyst for the change that we need, right? Because um a lot of the times, like the at least in my experience, I was able to learn so much from myself um with those bitter parts. Like, what are the things that I felt so angry, so hurt about? And that really showed me is like, okay, like these are the areas in my life that I want to improve, and
Mhm.
that there's room for growth there, right? Like this is not it. I don't have to stay stuck here.
Yes. Yeah, like you're in control of that. I read a quote not too long ago that like really hit me that speaks to what you're saying, and it was about like self-awareness. Like we can sit and kind of read all the great books out there or listen to all the great people talking. But if we don't have a level of self-awareness, we're never going to grow and we're
Mm-hmm.
never going to change those things we want to change, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that I think that speaks very profoundly to what you're describing, is the fact that like you're accepting of all of who you are, but you're also aware of all those hardships and those successes and joys too, right? It's like collective. It's not just any one thing. And that's what makes you who you are. And that helps you in your journey. And that's exactly what I'm hearing. And it's like resonating so much with me because sometimes there's a lot of shame built up around those things,
Mm.
right? Like folks don't want to talk about that because we feel like we're the only ones, or we feel like it's taboo, or we feel like it's not accepted, or it's a cultural like eso no se habla, like whatever it
Mhm.
might be that we grew up feeling or thinking, and you're really breaking those cycles and those barriers, like you said. So that is amazing, beautiful.
Thank you. And I love how you said self-awareness, because I feel like that's so crucial, like self-awareness is something that sometimes, and I don't blame folks who don't necessarily have that self-awareness, because sometimes, right, like those traumas are so deep that and we don't
Yeah.
have necessarily like the skills to kind of work through them. But self-awareness is like so important, as you said. And that's like the start of empowerment, right?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about little Atalie growing up and los pañalitos, going to school the first day, however far back you want to take us. You don't want to take us to the baby days if you don't want to. Just kind
Yeah.
of growing up. Like share with us a little bit about you as a child growing into adolescence, growing into adulthood. Kind of walk us through that journey or any part of that you want to share in terms of your background.
Yeah. So I guess like little Atalie. I've been trying to reconnect with that little Atalie a lot. I think like building this business has allowed me to do that, because I'm able to be more creative, more playful, kind of think about like, coloring outside of the lines type of thing. So I've been trying to kind of reconnect with little Atalie a lot more. But I would say growing up, I was kind of like I was very quiet. I would say, but always a little bit rebellious. So if you ask like my mom, she's always like, like you always had something to say. Like I didn't really talk a lot, but when I did, I had something to say, and I always asked a ton of questions. Like why do we do that? Like what is that? Just very, very curious. But I grew up in my grandparents' home. So that was like a big thing for me is growing up with my abuela, with my abuelo. Like they took care of me, and um, they really just kind of like, I guess, yeah, I mean, it's like they helped raise me, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then slowly, I think as I started to grow up in adolescence, I'm not gonna lie, Rocio, part of it is really dark, I think.
Yeah.
I think that part of it is I think that there's parts of my childhood that I'm trying to pick out like the good parts and not
Mhm.
always focus on the negative parts. So it's kind of like it's a ebb and flow when I think about it. So there's a lot of like dark parts, I would say,
Mhm.
that came from my childhood. Um, but very curious. And I guess you could say still rebellious and outspoken.
And how do you think so kind of growing, because I know we go through these like awkward moments in our life, right? Like, I don't know when they happen. They probably happen at different points for certain people, but where you're trying to discover like what you want to do, even like career wise or business
Right.
wise. Like for you, where was it in your journey where you decided like this is what, well, one, I want to create a business, right?
Mm.
And two, where you decided what the focus of your business was going to be. Like, do you think it was actually early on that you were kind of shaping that already? Or did it kind of come later in adulthood when you're like, I want to be a business owner and this is what I want my business to be about?
I think that it happened later in adulthood,
Mhm.
because when I was little, I felt like, sorry,
Okay.
my throat.
Yes, you gotta have el cafecito too, not just
It's tea.
or el tea, okay.
I'm getting over my a sickness with my cough, so I apologize in advance for that, but
Okay, no
we're good. So I think when I was little, you probably asked my mom, like, I wanted to be an artist, so I wanted to be a painter. I was like, yeah, like I want to paint, like I love art. Um, and then I realized that I didn't have any technical skill. So if you can imagine, I'm like, yeah, I like to paint, but I didn't really think that I could draw.
so you were saying about your kind of thinking through the concept of your business, wanting to be a business owner kind of later into your adulthood.
Yeah. And I think that, I'd say that it came later to me in adulthood because when I was growing up, I didn't really have like an example of like what I wanted to be per se, right? I mentioned that I'm first gen, so I'm like the first person in my family to kind of navigate like this whole space of the United States and what it
Mhm.
means to get an education and like, do you want a career? My grandfather was a maintenance worker and he worked
Yeah.
in the hospital, and my grandma stayed at home. But
Mhm.
I can tell you for a fact, the one thing I know I didn't want to do is I know that I didn't just want to stay home, you know? And I know that I didn't want to just be a housewife. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with that, right? Because I think we all choose what's best for us. But growing up, the example that I had as a woman in my family, it was very, very like, you know, like you serve the man,
Mhm.
you tend to the home. And basically, if all I wanted to do was just get married and have kids,
Mhm.
that would have been good enough,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
So I think in like childhood, I was really trying to figure out like, okay, well, my mom also was a stay-at-home mom for a long time, and I saw my grandmother do that. And I know that my dad, worked in retail and he just worked, but I
Mhm.
didn't really know exactly what it was that I wanted to do, right? And then I think fast forward to adulthood, I pursued the whole traditional like 9 to 5 career.
Mhm.
I graduated with a bachelor's in sociology, and then I started working in human resources. So that was like 6 years working in human resources. And then I decided to get my MBA because I always was curious about business. I didn't know if it was helping someone run their own business or, taking the path of entrepreneurship and starting my own.
Yeah.
Um, but it was during that time that I was in school and then the pandemic hit that
Mm.
it really manifested into, okay, one, I don't really like working for other people. Let's be honest. you know um and I think that's just because I think that entrepreneurship gives you the freedom to really be creative. It gives you an opportunity to build a team, and it's a beautiful journey in itself, right? It doesn't come easy. Like, let me tell you, I'm sure it is not an easy journey, but it's a beautiful journey. Like, it's crazy to have this idea, this thought, this like passion, this fire, and then you can see it manifest into something tangible where other folks can also experience that same thing.
Yeah.
So so I think that's what happened in adulthood, and it was through my healing journey, right? When I was transitioning from like this whole bitter person and bitter woman into a better person, that I really understood that, yes, like I need to do something, and I want to go on this like journey of entrepreneurship and build a business. Um, and see what happens.
Yeah, that takes a lot of courage. I mean, I think that yes, your journey up until this point has shaped that, right? Whatever has happened in your life has been so unique. The good, the bad, and the ugly, como dicen, ¿verdad? But it's
Hmm.
all like brought you to where you are today and really has given you the courage to pursue entrepreneurship because it's not easy, right? And I think some folks and those that are listening, if this is you, hopefully you're being inspired by what Adelie's sharing, but you kind of you don't move past concept. Right. And I
Right.
think that that's okay. Right. I think everybody's in a different place. So just the fact that maybe you've been in concept mode for 1 month, 10 months, 2 years, right, doesn't necessarily mean that it's never going to happen for you or that it's never going to, like you say, manifest into like an actual business. I think everyone's different. But I think everything that you've experienced has definitely brought you to this point where at some point you were like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. Right, because you gotta move something and you gotta move from concept to like implementation and launch at some point, and
Right.
that's the scary part, right? In having the courage to do that, but you had the courage to do that, and so I think, well, I'm of belief that we don't do that alone, right? There's folks, we have our tribe, we have our community, and so just curious to like if you can share who inspires you or what inspires you or who has influenced you to kind of take that step to realize your business.
Mhm. Well, I'll start with one. I would say that I think that completing the like Emprendedoras program has been a huge catalyst for my business, right? I
Yeah.
don't say that just because,
Just
I'm
because you're here.
here. But it's true, because one of the things that I said on my application was that I have done this by myself, but I'm ready to do this with community, right? Like, at the center of it, I said I really need community in order to take that from the concept into implementation and to
Mhm.
execution, and like to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think that the program was so beneficial to me and to my business is because finally, one, you're going through this with other women, right? Like-minded women who are kind of on the same journey with you, and you get to share and you connect. But the education and the resources that are provided to you, which, if you're the first time doing this, right? If you don't come from a family that has, access to capital, or has, has started a business before, it's very, very difficult. So
Mhm.
that's been a huge thing, is that's inspired me, and seeing the success of other women, right, who have done this and have gone through this. And I think you're a perfect example too, that this is also too, like, you are doing this work
Mhm.
that inspires. So that's one. And I think I can't do it, I think, without, I have to say, my fiance. She's been a really beautiful, beautiful person in this journey because I don't think that I could have done it without her. And I hope that doesn't sound cheesy, but she definitely deserves a lot of credit because like I said, I was doing it by myself, you know, and then it's her saying like, yeah, you can do this. Like, this is great. Keep going. Has really been supportive to me.
Yeah, and we need that voice sometimes. We're our own worst critic. Sometimes when we need encouragement the most, we can't pull it out of ourselves, right? And
Hmm.
so having those people next to us by our side, loved ones, family, partners, whatever it might be, to kind of give us that little nudge or even like manually help us with things when we need,
Yes,
like goes a long way, you know?
it does.
So, what do you want folks to when they I know you shared like kind of the purpose of your business and what it is all about, but when folks kind of have that first touch experience with
Mhm.
you or with your business, like what is it that you want them to know or feel? Like what's the like purpose behind um the business? And I know you kind of spoke to that already, but if you could say that kind of like not like a commercial, but like well, what's the kind of like
Yeah.
3 lines that
What's
you
my elevator pitch to
yeah.
everybody, right? So I'll share this. I think that the bitter woman is going to mean a lot of different things to different folks, right? Because I think we're all on our own journey. But I think that the one thing and the purpose behind it is that I want to provide a space where you feel seen, validated, and that your unique experiences, right, as a BIPOC woman of color, is taken into account because so much of the businesses and spaces out there really do tailor and to white women,
Mhm.
and we're meant to conform, we're meant to learn and to accommodate to this specific mold that really wasn't really designed for us. So I want folks to feel seen, to feel heard, but to know that there's support, and whether that's through a workshop, if that's an event, right, where you get to network, you connect, it's really being able to kind of bring all of this together within community so that we can all grow, right? And I really do believe that personal growth also leads to professional growth.
Mhm.
So doing this type of work, it manifests into to other aspects of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean
I hope that answers the
you're
question. I don't know.
yeah. No, that did. That did. I mean, I feel like what I'm hearing too is like you're kind of stuck with yourself. So like you can't you can't run away from yourself, right? So it's going to impact all of you, right? Whether you're a business owner or whether you're like a career professional or a stay-at-home mom or a mother or like whatever your role or roles are, because obviously there's multiple hats that everybody wears, right? Is that you can't run away from yourself. You're always with you, right? And I think that whatever you're doing is impacting, whether it's good or bad, impacting all of you. And so, I love that you embrace and your business embraces people where they are and kind of accepts and really sees the beauty behind like all of you, right? All of that
Right.
coming together in who you are is like this space is for you to kind of continue to learn and grow and just be yourself. So I think that a lot of women are looking for that. I know that even in this space and what we're creating here is we're always talking to women, and that I would say is a number one is
Hmm.
wanting that space and embracing that experience when they have it, right? And so I think it's something that's definitely needed, and folks are going to you're going to continue to see a lot of growth, I think, with your business because it's such a pure and again just like really needed thing for people. But I know through that it's like we said earlier, it's not always easy or it hasn't been easy, right? This journey of starting your business and maintaining your business and kind of what you see going next. So, what you feel comfortable sharing, what are some of the struggles that you have faced in building your business? And and if you've overcome them, because some you might be currently working through, but what has been helpful for you to like get through or overcome those struggles?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question because I think I think we kind of talked about this. The theme is that you can learn a lot from like challenges or struggles and things like that. And I don't want to pitch to be overly positive, but I think that like being reflective is really important. But I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing has been access to capital and
Mm,
knowing how much it takes to start a business because I think the one thing that I learned is it's so for folks I've heard people just like, yeah, go ahead and just start, or like I just started that, but not knowing that they had, you know, $500 or even $1,000 of someone to help them with, you know, their first batch of inventory, or even for me, right? Establishing an LLC costs money. And if
mhm,
you are, you know, supporting yourself on your own,
mhm,
that's very expensive, and there's a lot of like small little costs that come into it
mhm,
that I'm learning comes with building a business. And sometimes, right, like that $500 that you use, like you need to that needs to go as far as it needs to like go, and you
mhm,
can't make any mistakes with that because it's going to take me a little bit longer to get, you know, that money back or to save up that money. So I've learned that the real struggle has been trying to access like financial resources without having to go for a loan, because I know that there's things with like accident like getting a loan, but I think there comes a point where you understand when a loan is needed for your growth
mhm.
and when you can kind of still bootstrap, you know, your business a little bit without taking that. So for me, I think it's been financially, like it's been a struggle, like, you know, even getting a website up, right? Website design, graphic design, things like that, working with someone to kind of make sure that you're legal, all of that costs money.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that you hit it on the nail. It's one of the top needs for sure is the access to capital. And
Hmm.
not only accessing the capital, but like you said, navigating those systems and
Right.
really understanding your business and where you are and when that makes sense, right? Because there's a level of risk taking, but there's also a level of like just I don't want to say risk with your health, but almost like mentally preparing yourself or like being ready mentally for whatever comes your way, right? One thing is
Hmm.
the tangible stuff, like yes, the money too, because you need to purchase things. The other part's your own like health and stress and anxiety around those things and those decisions, which is really real. And they call it, I think, social capital, right? Is more like kind of the human capital side of things, right? When you have to infuse that into your analysis, for lack of a better word, right?
Hmm.
Everybody analyzes kind of when they need things, why, and when they're ready, and it's super real. So thank you for bringing that to light because I know again you're not the only one, and a lot of folks speak to that. So kind of knowing, and it sounds like you're very self-aware of kind of where your struggles have been and where obviously you celebrate, you know, all the good that you've done. Where do you, and this isn't a question on the list either, but I'm just going to ask it, is more about like future, right? Like vision. Like where do you see Atalie and the bitter woman 5, 10, 20 years from now? I mean, that's a big
Wow.
gap, but you know, like
Yeah.
wherever you want to kind of frame that, like where do you see the future? Where would you like that future to be and to lead you towards?
Oh,
You're like, that's a heavy
well,
question, and you didn't
it
give that to me.
is. It is. It's such a heavy question because, you know, I'm like, where do I see it?
Mhm,
One, definitely, I envision the bitter woman to be um more than just, you know, something that's online or once in a while in person. I definitely want this to be something where like on a
mhm,
global level,
mhm,
like even a movement, right? Of just like a lot of women on their healing journey, prioritizing self-care, coming together like a movement. 5 to 10 years, I think that's definitely happening to like really just challenge and rewrite a lot of those negative narratives.
mhm,
But I would say closer to the 5 years. offering like one-to-one support, that's one thing that I think is super needed as well. Because right now, we have events, we're working on getting our workshops together, but I definitely want to be able to do something where it's like more of like a one-to-one type of individual support to offer folks. But I mean, I think that might answer the question. The thing is, I think it's gonna take its own course, right? I think that
Mhm.
my business, I'm letting really like, I really speak with like the universe. I say that, right? And I let things that it's more so that I think that I'm not, I'm just like a vehicle for the work that I need to do. And it's just gonna come through. But I definitely just feel like there's gonna be a lot of impact to a lot of women who are in need of this. That's where I hope it goes.
Yeah, I love that. Well, that's amazing. I mean, I think that it speaks also to your business and your brand and what you're building, is that it sounds like it's going to evolve, right? With whatever perhaps the need is, or where, like you say, the universe guides you to be based on what your community needs. And I think that
Hmm.
the space that you're creating speaks to that. It lends itself to that just so beautifully and organically, right? Because that's, I think, part of any journey. Things change and evolve over time, and sometimes we can control it and sometimes we can't. So I love the grace that you're kind of, embodying that, and you're embracing that. I think that's really cool. So we're kind of winding down our time, but
Yeah.
I do want to get your words of wisdom and any advice or tips or something you want to share with aspiring Latinas that are thinking about or maybe have just started their business. What are some kind of tips that you want to share and or just words of encouragement?
I think the tips and words of encouragement I would share is ask the questions. I think that a lot of the times we have this thing where we get like imposter syndrome where we don't even know like if we
Mhm.
should be here, or we get too scared to ask the questions. But I feel like you have to, like as an entrepreneur, like you're really like dictating the course of your business and where it's going to go. And if you want to take it to the next step, sometimes that means that you have to ask questions, and don't be afraid, right? If it's like a stupid question, or oh, I should know this, right? Sometimes we put ourselves in this thing where we should know all the answers, or like, oh, I should know this already, but it's okay. Like there's no like blueprint to what it means. You can do your own research, but you're never going to have all the answers. So ask the questions and take up the space.
Mhm.
I'm like, I think that's kind of like the big thing about the bitter woman, is just like to really motivate and inspire, is that like it's okay to take up the space. Like you need to take up that space. So your business is a great way to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I think some of that comes with where what folks' experiences have been, where they shy away from, right, taking up space. Some of it I feel can
Uh,
be cultural, or again, depending on like our upbringing. And I say we because I put myself in all these spaces that you're mentioning because I feel like I
yeah.
can personally relate to them. But it's like, do as you're told, or, don't speak up here, or like be nice, right? It's like, oh, you got to be nice to yourself too. Like you have to also have that kind of willingness to be able to, like you say, speak for yourself, speak up, ask a question, because sometimes the moments passes by and
Hmm.
we don't get that same experience again. And we also don't want to kind of have the regret of, well, because I didn't speak up or ask the question, will I ever get that chance again to maybe be in front of that person or in that space or whatever it might be, right? So, and obviously it's easier for me to say those things and harder sometimes when we're in them to actually like, okay, I'm going to ask, or I'm going to push, or I'm going to, show myself a little more and be vulnerable, right? Those things are all hard things, but I think that's really good advice and wisdom that you're sharing with folks. Um, yeah, go ahead. Were you gonna say
No,
something?
I mean, I was gonna say, right? I think it's like as Latinas, right? There's really like there's really we're so powerful, I think, in numbers. Like if you think about, the Latino community in the United States, like we are a powerhouse, right? Like we're
Mhm,
coming in strong. But if you look at the numbers in terms of the businesses, right? um, and where we're at. I know that there has been some growth, but it's not, I think apples to apples. And so that's why I think it's so important that even though you have those fears, know that like it's so important, right, to ask those questions because we deserve to be in all of these spaces. Our businesses deserve to have just as much success as any other business
Mhm.
that's out there. So even more so, you know,
Yeah.
even more so. I believe it.
Yes, I agree with you. I am right there with you. Definitely believe that. So I want to thank you so much. Is there anything else that maybe we didn't touch on that you just feel like really compelled to share or to bring up? Or I just want to make sure we don't miss anything because we've had such a beautiful time. But we have like a few more minutes. So if there's anything more that you want to kind of just speak to, please, I want to make sure you have the space to do so.
I mean, I think I want to talk a little bit about empower her.
Oh yes,
I think
yes.
that's important.
Of course. Yes, please.
uh,
Okay, so this is a plug-in about coming up, things to look forward to, support Atalie and her business. Go for it.
yes. So we have our very first in-person event on July 7th called Empower Her. And it's an event specifically catered to elevate the daughters of immigrants.
Mm,
And so I know I shared a little bit about my background. I know that there's a lot of like daughters of immigrants who are listening to this. And I want you to know that this is the type of space that like I'm creating with the bitter woman is to really like offer those curated experiences that your little self needed
mm,
growing up. And
mm.
so it's going to be an amazing event. There's going to be amazing people there. We'll have a wellness piece, which is to build your self-care toolkit. I know that we do so much work in our communities, in our homes, but I think that self-care is such a huge piece of that, and making sure that we take care of ourselves in order to take care of others is huge. So that's going to be a part of it. We're also going to have an amazing panel discussion with some like amazing young Latinas who are in the community doing a lot of work. And it's an opportunity just to network, connect, and be in community with each other. So I'm so excited about this. It's great. And there is more to come. So I'll share that this is just the beginning.
Bravo. That's what we like to hear. Yes, it's not the at last it's the start. It's the beginning of something beautiful. So, well, we wish you the best of luck with that. We know it's going to be wonderful. So if y'all are listening to this, there's still time to sign up, I'm assuming, and to
Yes.
yes. Okay, so there's still time to put in your RSVP and register and attend, but also just as important, if not more, make sure that you continue to support Atalie and her business. And if any of this is spoken to you, please reach out to her. We're going to make sure to share her Instagram and her contact info, and so you can get a hold of her. But Atalie, this has been so inspiring for me, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to be in the space with us, to build community together, and to share your story. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be part of the Emprendedoras program. I'm telling you, I came out a whole new person,
Yeah.
right? And it's been a kickstart to all the things that are in the future. So it's been such a pleasure to be here, to be able to share my story. And I just want to thank you for doing what you do and doing what you're doing for all of Latinas out there because it is something that is so needed and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much. Well, everybody, make sure to catch us on our next interview and to continue to support Atalie. But for now, we'll see you all later. Adios.
Bye.
Gracias.
Thank you.